Morning, girls. This is our final lesson in I think it's called our summer quarterly. It's session 13. It's the second and the final lesson in the Song of Solomon. And the title of it is called Relational Investment. Now, we're going to try something new this morning. I'm going to talk like it's Sunday morning because Brenda is supposed to have her laptop so you all can share this lesson Sunday morning in person, or for those of y'all who are still quarantining or absent or gone or whatever. I'm going to try to do this in tandem for a while. I don't know that this is doing anybody any good at all, but it makes me study, and then I can share it with you guys. Only we'll keep doing it as long as somebody's benefiting from it. And so here we go. Today's lesson. Last week we had our first lesson in Song of Solomon, and it was a song. It's a song that Solomon wrote for his bride, and primarily he spoke in the third person as if he, recording what she was saying. And it was about marital fidelity and about security and about trust and about sexual intimacy within the confines of marriage and marriage only. And that marriage being between a man and a woman. So today's second half of Solomon, we're going to realize that we invest in our relationship, but we also must invest in our relationship with God. So today's lesson is found in chapter 5, verse 2, to the end of the book, which is chapter 8, verse 14. Now our focus is going to be in chapter 5, verses 6 through 16. So the word investing often conjures up thoughts about stock markets or real estate and retirement plans, but what about investing in relationships? Oh, it looks like my hair is a little bit too poofy, girls. I didn't think you'd get too poofy because the higher the hair, the closer to God. Just threw that in there. So the believer's relationship with God also requires an investment of time and energy. Christians must invest quality time to be focused on the Lord and in conversation with Him, not only in congregational worship, however, that's very important, but also in personal and private worship, through Bible study and through prayer. And so the Bible is God's love letter to us, and prayer is our conversation with Him. So the Song of Solomon is this love song about Solomon's marriage to a woman from Shunem. And that language is intensely personal and at times very intimate. It celebrates that God-given gift of romantic love. But it also teaches that just as a married couple must invest in their relationship with each other, even so, God's people must invest in their relationship with Him. So when we are all young, we tend to invest in diplomas, in careers, and in cars. I can tell you just about what everybody drove in high school in 1977, but I can't tell you what I had for supper last night. As we get older, we make different kinds of investments, maybe mutual funds or retirement plans, and our needs change over time, and so do our perspective on what matters the most. So whether we're young or old, however, we're wise. We are wise when we see the value of investing in relationships, beginning with our relationship with God. So the context talks about the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs, in chapter 1, verse 2 through chapter 5, verse 1, which was last week's lesson, describes this bride and groom's anticipation of their marriage. And then the second part of this love song is found in chapter 5, verses 2 through the end of the book, which assumes that the couple are now husband and wife. That's where we find ourselves today. Yet they experienced similar anxieties about being separated from each other. So this structural discussion of two separations, one before and one after the wedding, captures this common relational issues generated by romantic love. The song compares and contrasts the storybook expectations before the wedding with the bliss of the wedding night and the anticlimactic familiarity of marriage as time moves on. So married couples must invest time and effort into maintaining the intimacy and the quality of their relationship. Otherwise, that relationship can become stale, strained, and perhaps even reach a breaking point. So in Solomon chapter 5, verses 2 through 7, chapter 9 is, this is one of these structured chiasms. Both the beginning and the end move horizontally towards the center. And so when the wife is sleeping alone in her bedroom, it's not clear why that happens, but she responds tentatively when her husband returns and he wants to enter. When she finally rises to let him in the bedroom, he had left the house without explanation. So evidently some issue had threatened the relationship and had resulted in a separation. So then we find in chapter 7, verses 10, all the way through the end of the book, concludes the story of the husband and wife's song of romantic love. After their time of separation, the couple plans a retreat in which they can spend time together in a setting that will renew their passion for and commitment to one another. The song ends with the husband and the wife recapturing the excitement of their relationship as it was depicted in the springtime days leading up to their wedding, last week's lesson. So a husband and wife must invest in their relationship if they are to enjoy the full potential of their love and their commitment. The dynamics of that relationship between a husband and wife make marriage an ideal picture of the relationship between Christ and his church. So let's read our focus verses. And we're going to start in chapter 5, verses 6. I opened to my love, but my love had turned and gone away. My heart sank because he had left. I sought him, but did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer. Verse 7, the guards who go about the city found me. They beat me and wounded me. They took my cloak from me, and the guardians of the wall. Verse 8, young women of Jerusalem, I charge you, if you find my love, tell him that I am heartsick. Verse 9, what makes the one you love better than another, most beautiful of women? What makes him better than another, that you would give us this charge? Verse 10, my love is fit and strong, noble among 10,000. Verse 11, his head is purest gold. His hair is wavy and black as a raven. Verse 12, his eyes are like doves and beside flowing streams, washed in milk and set like jewels. Verse 13, his cheeks are like beds of spice, mounds of perfume. His lips are lilies dripping with flowing myrrh. Verse 14, his arms are rods of gold set with beryl. His body is an ivory panel covered with lapis lazuli, which I have no idea. I guess it's like sapphires is what the tells us. Verse 15, his legs are alabaster pillars set on pedestals of pure gold. His presence is like Lebanon, as majestic as the cedars. Verse 16, his mouth is sweetness. He is absolutely desirable. This is my love, and this is my friend, young women of Jerusalem. So let's unpack these just a little bit. Our writers have broken this down into subsections. And the first one is this cry from companionship, verses 6 through 8. The song depicts the new wife as needing emotional support from her husband, and she called out to others for help, but was met with abuse. Verse 6, I opened to my love, but my love had turned and gone away. My heart sank because he had left. I sought him, but did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer. So it's stated in the Understand the Context section. This verse represents a time following the couple's wedding day. Solomon and his bride were now husband and wife. Yet for some reason, she slept in her bedroom and he was not there, even though the hour was late. So the bride arose to open the door for her husband to enter, only to find he wasn't there. This tragic scene pictures this bride seeking her husband, and he was nowhere to be found. It describes the longing of a woman for the partnership and the companionship of her husband. So Solomon used vivid terms to address the hurt and the harm this bride experienced by her husband's absence. He had turned and gone away. Her heart sank, but he did not answer. how tragic it is when a husband neglects the care to meet the needs of his wife, and how equally sad it is when a wife fails to meet the needs of her husband. Verse 7, the guards who go about the city found me. They beat and wounded me. They took my cloak from me, the guardians of the wall. So in this verse, the setting takes a dramatic turn. Having discovered that her husband had left the palace, the bride dressed and went out into the city to search for him. Now, verse 7 happened when the new bride could not find her husband. So what happened? Unmet needs and desires in a marriage can end in tragedy. The bride seeking her husband was met with abuse. In fact, the Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 7, has been viewed by some as a reference to abuse, maybe even rape, as the city guards beat and wounded her and took her cloak from her. Now, there is never any excuse for any form of physical or sexual abuse, and any form of other kinds of abuse must never be overlooked or ignored. Having said all this, the episode described in these verses could quite possibly reflect a dream. The writers are telling us that. Earlier, the woman talked about a dream in which she searched for the man, the love of her life, back in chapter 3. Now she recalled another dream in which she looked for her love, who was now her husband. In fact, the description of what happened to the woman here in verse 7 strongly resembles and gives the impression that she was dreaming. In reality, she married Solomon, the king of Israel. And for that reason, she likely would not have been mistreated by any guards. But in her dream, however, they wounded and abused her. And this is a classic example of some of the language that we simply can't understand. And remember, Solomon's the one writing this. So that we need to write those down and ask St. Peter when we get to the gates. I got a list. Verse 8, young women of Jerusalem, I charge you, if you find my love, tell him I am lovesick. So in her husband's disappearance, it jolted the wife out of her apathy. The ill treatment she received from the city guards made her even more desperate to find her husband. Consequently, she enlisted some young women of Jerusalem to support her efforts for her reconciliation. So until the wedding day, they had been her peers and perhaps even competitors for the king's attention. Now, however, the wife felt she could enlist their help and emotional support. The appearance of these women in the song's storyline makes it a strategic moment. The phrase I charge you literally means I am causing you to take an oath. Oaths were sacred promises. Persons who agreed to an oath were obligated to do so within their power to fulfill it. So in this case, the young women were obligated to give the husband a message from the wife if they found him. So the conditional phrase, if you could find, could suggest that part of the oath was to join the wife in searching for her husband. Equally possible, however, is the view that the wife had charged them to deliver her message if they happened to encounter her husband during their daily activities. The verb rendered find can mean either to find or to come upon. So the wife's intended message to her husband was direct and conciliatory. I am lovesick. Her language in verse 8 harks back to the feelings she expressed previously in anticipation of their marriage. So the basic meaning of this word rendered lovesick is to be sick or to faint. So the choice of words was significant in the Hebrew. They signaled that she now yearned for her husband in the way that she had before the wedding. Their separation, whether emotional or actual, made her feel ill. So godly marriages should be characterized by mutual moral and emotional support. Verbally expressing love for one spouse is vital to this healthy relationship. So telling other people how wonderful one spouse is helps too. Marriages get into trouble when spouses are distant, emotionally distant, even though they may be present physically. So the next set of scriptures our writers called, this is the call for remembering. Solomon wrote of a response by the young women that challenged the bride to remember why she was attracted to her husband in the first place. Verse 9, what makes the one you love better than another, most beautiful of women? What makes him better than another that you would give us this charge? So these young women's response to the bride challenged her to remember why she was attracted to her husband in the first place. Why did she choose her husband over all the other men in the town? What made him stand out? What caused her to love him above all others? And these kinds of questions led her to charge the women of the city to inform her absentee husband that she was lovesick over him. So relational amnesia can impact a marriage. So the numerous reasons a wife or a husband had for entering into a marriage covenant can be forgotten over time. People change. Our minds develop in different ways, and our bodies age as the years pass. And unless there is diligence to remember and guard all the reasons that led a person into a marriage in the first place, the possibilities of the demise of that relationship only increase. By choosing to continually retell their story, a husband and wife can continue to build a successful and long-term marriage. Love must not be assumed, but continually developed and expressed. Remembering why you got into a relationship in the first place can actually help keep you in that relationship. So then we have the last section of verses called the crux for celebrating. So Solomon told of the bride, recounting the admirable characteristics of the husband. In doing so, the bride is seen reaffirming her love for her husband. Verse 10, my love is fit and strong, notable among 10,000. Now Solomon's writing this about himself. Verse 11, his head is pierced gold, his hair is wavy and black as a raven, his eyes are like doves beside flowing streams, washed in milk and set like jewels. His cheeks are like beds of spice, mounds of perfume. His lips are lilies dripping with flowing myrrh. His arms are rods of gold set with beryl. His body is an ivory panel covered with sapphires. In verse 15, his legs are alabaster pillars set on pedestals of pure gold. His presence is like Lebanon, as majestic as the cedars. Verse 16, his mouth is sweetness. He is absolutely desirable. This is my love, and this is my friend, young women of Jerusalem. So this is kind of where we find ourselves in verses 10 through 16. The bride has recounted all these admirable characteristics of her husband. And old Solomon did miss a one. He made sure he got them all in there. And in doing so, she is seen as reaffirming her love for him. Love between a husband and a wife will take the form of encouragement. There are like three themes of encouragement that emerge in this section of verses. First, now the bride has complimented her husband's physical attributes. The compliments of the bride are effusive. She complimented his strength, his hair, his eyes, his face, and his lips. Now his arms and his body, his physique, and even his physical presence. Finally, the sweetness of his kisses. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and what one considers as beautiful or handsome, another may not. What is important is to reaffirm each other with words. Secondly, the bride identified her husband as my friend. Now this is remarkable. This is in 900 BC, and this is remarkable. For as much emphasis as the Song of Solomon puts on the importance of sexual intimacy between a husband and a wife, it is vital for God's people to understand that there is much more to a successful marriage than sexual intimacy. Friendship, partnership, and companionship are equally important. In fact, there will be seasons when the physical dimension of a marriage will be less important than the friendship dimension of marriage. So viewing our husbands and wives as our best friends is essential. A wife and a husband may have a variety of friends and acquaintances, but in the end, that friendship between a husband and a wife must take priority over all other friendships. And thirdly, the third theme is that the bride's effusive support of her husband and her desire for a true partnership with him, it speaks of an emotional and a spiritual depth that is crucial in a successful marriage. Now, a successful marriage encompasses intimacy, fidelity, and emotional connection. And the kind of marriage that Solomon portrayed in the Song of Songs is a precursor of the kind of marriage described in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22 through 33. And I want to read you what Paul wrote. Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as also Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their husbands in everything. Husbands, verse 25, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, and that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh and of his bones. And for this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So this is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. So we read the words of Paul there in the New Testament. Here, Paul explained that husbands are to love and to lead their spouse as Christ loves and leads the church. Wives are to love and follow their husbands in fulfilling the image of what it means to be in Christ. So intentionally celebrating each other in marriage is crucial to a successful marriage. Neglected marriages are rarely successful marriages. One-dimensional relationships seldom survive. If the relationship is based on the physical and sexual alone, then the emotional support needed for a marriage may be absent. If a marriage is just about friendship to the neglect of the sexual intimacy, a marriage may be passionless. Successful marriages are multidimensional. They're emotional, they're mental, spiritual, and physical. So a biblical perspective of the marriage relationship understands that God intends for husbands and wives to celebrate each other. It means that each spouse maintains sincere gratitude and love for the strengths that the other spouse brings to the relationship. They can and should be grateful to God for the marriage partners that he has given them. Now, girls, we are off to Isaiah. And I picked up my books already. The new books are in the church office. Elaine, whoever wants to go get them and pass them out to y'all, any of y'all out there in the cyber world, y'all can stop by the church office and Linda has them right there, unless Elaine brings them all to the classroom. Okay, girls. Patty out. I'm on my way to Georgia to see my grandbabies. Love you, girls. Pray for us as we travel and for Matthew as he moves and starts this next leg of his journey. Patty out.